Right, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, my dear young brothers and sisters. It's good to see you and good to be here again. Um, and this is a quite a difficult topic, but it's a very crucial topic and an important in so many ways, because this safeguards our future, it safeguards the next generation, it engenders happiness and so on. And just to allay people's fears, I do not run a matrimonial service for prisoners, just in case people are thinking, oh, how does this expertise link with that? It doesn't. But let's go in, and I'll give you a kind of theoretical breakdown of different sectors here, and then we'll open the floor to Q&A. And if you're too shy to ask a question, you can always send it in to Sister Sarah, and then we can read it out, then inshallah. So the first thing I think is quite important to realize that the marriage in Islam is a sunnah. It's a sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and it's an act that brings with it reward. And if you think that every interaction with a fellow human being brings reward, if you think of it in that way, because we are not isolationist, we are not monastic in nature as a religion, then that means the best of interaction, the more interactions that you have most is with your spouse. And that interaction itself is reward worthy, has potential to be reward worthy. And so marriage is a source of happiness, of course, on the earth, but it's also a source of happiness in the hereafter. Because a true marriage, a good marriage, people who engender love with each other will get reward for every single second of that relationship. So it's very important to realize it's a sunnah. And we have the famous hadith of the three unknown companions who came to the house of the Prophet ﷺ. It was Aisha. They called on her and they wanted to see the Prophet ﷺ, and he was away. And they asked about his worship. So this story is in Bukhari and Muslim. They asked about his worship. And when Aisha answered the questions, one of them said, I will pray all night and I will never sleep any night. And another one said, I will fast and never stop fasting throughout the year. I will fast every day. And the third one said, and I will never go near women I will not marry. And the Prophet, they then walked off because they thought their own worship was insignificant compared to the Prophet's. So they thought they had to do the extra mile. The Prophet came home. Aisha told him that this is what happened. He then ran after them, caught up with them, and he said very famous words, I sleep and I pray. I fast and I break my fast. And I love women and I marry them. And this is my sunnah. So sunnah is, marriage is sunnah. And the Quran is full of ayats talking about how Allah created things in pairs, and they are all complementary. They shape around each other. And the Quran, when it mentions about marriage itself, talks about three very important words. You'll have heard them in many wedding khutbah. And they are sakina, that marriage offers sakina, a place of tranquility, a place of comfort and solace, and it offers mawadda, love between two people, and rahmah, mercy between two people. And when you look at these three words, they are the key ingredients, really, of a successful marriage. That one should, in an ideal world, look forward to coming home to their spouse because they realize that's where tranquility is, that's where peace is, that's where comfort is. From the rigors of the harsh world we live in, that's the home. And love is, I mean, we'll carry on, we'll talk about love and compassion, etc. But love is where you care more for the other than you do for yourself. And the rahmah is when people falter, you offer mercy and compassion in a gentle way between each other. You have these three key ingredients, you have a successful marriage. So this is, in essence, is about what it means, marriage in Islam. Now, how do you decide on a spouse? How do you decide who to marry? What are the things you look for? And this is the famous hadith in Bukhari, which is often quoted, narrated Abu Huraira radiallahu anhu, that the Prophet ﷺ said, a woman is married for four things: her wealth, and you see the Arabic mal, her family status, her beauty, and her deen. So a person, and now when you see the word woman, you can translate it the other way. A spouse is married for four things, because remember the fiqh ruling, a general principle in fiqh, is that which applies to one gender is applicable to all genders, or all of them, both sides, unless there is a karina or context that says it's specific. So you have many injunctions where the Prophet is talking about men that applies to women as well, and vice versa. So if you reread this, a spouse is married for four things: the wealth, the family, the beauty, and the deen. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, marry for the deen so that you may prosper. I mean, the actual Arabic word is slightly different, but that's what it indicates. Now, that does not negate. So these are what often happens in society. People marry for wealth, they marry for lineage, family connections, etc., power. They marry for beauty, and they marry for, if you like, the values and principles that shape a person, their character, their deen. So that's how, and marrying for the latter is more long-lasting. And now, this hadith is often not quoted when people talk about how to decide about spouses. And this is Fatima bint Qais, radiallahu anha, may Allah be pleased with her. She came to the Prophet ﷺ, she was going through a divorce, the famous hadith, but let's use it in this context of deciding on a spouse. Fatima radiallahu anha mentioned to the Prophet ﷺ, I mentioned to him that Muawiyah ibn Abu Sufyan and Abu Jaham had sent proposals of marriage to me. Whereupon Allah's Messenger ﷺ said, as for Abu Jaham, he does not put his staff from his shoulder. And that is a metaphor that he's quite a harsh person. So his temperament is harsh. And as for Muawiyah, he is a poor man having no property. So the Prophet is talking about that he's not a wealthy person. And then the Prophet suggested to her, marry Usama bin Zayd. And Fatima was saying, she ummed and ahed, if you like. And the Prophet said, marry him. And so she decided to marry him. So this is not a command, it's a suggestion to her. Of course, she could choose any of those. She's asking the Prophet his opinion, and she married him, and then Allah blessed us therein, and I was envied by others. Now here, the Prophet is using two other criterion, which are also quite important. He's using character, firmness, harshness in character, how someone is, soft-edged or hard, you know what I mean? So he's using that aspect. And you're going to find it tough living with him because he's not a gentle person. And secondly, you're going to find it difficult and you're going to struggle financially. Of course, it's up to you, but you're going to struggle financially because he's quite a poor person without means. So Prophet ﷺ is using other criterion here. Of course, they're both companions. Of course, they're deen, and the rest of it is there. So that's quite important that you can look at, and you should look at all aspects. So societies are different, and there are different traditions, and there is no problem in societies to have and the value of urf. So in usul al-fiqh, urf, tradition, your culture, your custom, it plays a very important part. And there is no problem, and Islam accepts all cultures that is not in direct contradiction with the Sharia, which is why you have all the dress codes, you have all the different foods, because Islam says, culture, absolutely. And in most societies, some people have asked, why is it that these hadiths are about men deciding on women? And possibly, there's a possible answer, this conjecture, of course. In most societies, the men do the asking, generally speaking, and women then research the men who've asked, if you like. But generally speaking, in most societies, they do. I mean, in this society, there's the old statement, isn't it? That it's not a leap year, and in leap years women can ask. But it's important for us to realize that Khadija radiallahu anha chose the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She's the one who researched him. She's the one who sent out her servants and her people to find out about him. And she's the one who decided and then sent the marriage proposal. So there is no issue from a religious perspective the other way around. Okay. Now, and I put in here personally. So we've heard what the guidance is generally from an Islamic perspective. Look for the person who is more religious. And religious, very important to define this. What is religious? And if you think that religious is, oh, he's a pakka namazi, he prays 5 times a day. Oh, you know, mashallah, he's such a good brother, or she's such a good sister. Every second word is mashallah and alhamdulillah and inshallah. And is this religious? So religious is actually, has to be deeper than just superficial words. Has to be deep into the character and psyche of a person. And if you think about what are the key ingredients of the Prophet ﷺ said, the highest thing that will be judged on the Day of Judgment, the highest weight will be given to character, akhlaq. And that is the most religious thing, if you think. And if you remember the story about the person who was famous for their prayers and their fasts, but they hurt their neighbor with their tongue. So that's not religious. So we have to take away from our mindset about what religious is and what is not religious. One of the sisters, I asked if she would consider me for marriage way back when I was a wee lad. She actually turned around and said to me, and it broke my heart, of course, she said to me, you're not religious. So I said, oh, right, okay, what do you mean? How do you mean? And she goes, when I see you from a distance, if I don't know you, you're wearing Western clothing. And so, brother, when the people saw the Sahaba, they saw Muslims. I said, but they didn't really, because the non-Muslims wore the same dress. She goes, there you are, you're arguing again. So I couldn't. But what I'm saying is, for her, religious was an appearance as a starting point. And so it's quite important when you think, what does it mean that person has deen? And much more lasting than any superficial words and actions is inbuilt beliefs, your virtues, what you stand for, what do you believe, how kind are you, how compassionate are you, how do you interact with others. It will determine also how you interact with your spouse. So what are you personally looking for? And different people have different levels. So when I, for example, found some people, I looked at their level and commitment of practicing Islam. And practicing I use with an inverted commas, what I see. Of course, Allah sees more than we all do. And in their hearts, they might be truly practicing, but what we see is maybe. And so sometimes I think, well, actually, they're probably looking for somebody like this, and they're probably looking. So you determine what you're personally looking for, what your degree of commitment to the practice of Islam are you looking for. You determine, of course, attraction and intimacy. Intimacy is very important. If you look at the 3 main things that go on to divorce, one of them is intimacy, sexual intimacy and attraction. One of them is money, and one of them is power, and if you like, a kind of controlling nature and things like that. So those are 3 main ingredients when it comes to divorce, in my experience. So attraction is your personal, what you kind of person you like, tall, short, hair, whatever. Or I don't mean has hair or no hair, but however you want to see it, you determine that. Kindness and compassion, you look at your degree of what? The flexibility of a person, how amiable, how chilled out they are. That's your determining. How consultative, very important, in my view. Often I've seen marriages break down because one decides what happens at the exclusion of the other. This is a team effort. You're joined now. It has to be in consultation with each other. So does he or she believe in consultation? Do they discuss, are they people who discuss things? Financial support, get that ironed out from the outset. Different expectations. Oh, I expected him to pay for everything. Oh, I expected her to be working, etc. Iron all of those out, because they, as I said to you, finance is the second biggest or first biggest reason of divorce. People don't realize and don't think of these things. They're very important things. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned Muawiyah was a poor person. Why? That's the Prophet ﷺ. Because he knew Fatima radiallahu anha. She was used to a certain degree of comfort. Fitting in with family. It's not just you getting married. You're not going to marry someone and then disappear off into the horizon and we never hear from you. You're going to marry and the families are going to interact. The families are merging closer together. What's the fit? How will he or she fit with my family, with my mother, my father, my brothers and sisters? And how will he or she fit and their families fit with our family? Very important. The closer the fit, the better and stronger the support mechanisms there are for a marriage. A sense of humor. And the Hanafis have a very special and quite a finessed subject heading within their madhab called kafa'a, which is compatibility. And they look at various things. They look at language, they look at culture, they look at the means by which the lady is kept before marriage and the means with which she may be kept after. They look at so many different things, Bedouins or non-Bedouins. And sadly, in some cases, they look at caste even. So some Hanafi scholars did not like the idea that a Sayyid marries outside, even though Islamically absolutely is permitted. So these are all, what are you personally looking for? What is your list of Mr. Al Perfecto and Miss, what is your ideal? What are you striving to find and look for in a spouse? So make that list, think through it. And of course, quite important also is, what are you personally not looking for? What are the red lines for you? What sets off alarm bells or you personally don't like? And I remember one marriage which divorced within about 8 months, and she could not stand his unhygienic and very for her, he was not clean. He would be the way he lived, the way he was. So, and it's quite interesting that his appearance was reasonably immaculate, reasonable. But so we tried to patch things up, but no, it didn't. So, what hygiene, personal hygiene, appearance, practicalities. He doesn't lift a finger. Will he lift a finger? Will she? One of the nikahs I conducted in Newcastle many years ago, and as you know, in the nikah you have a contract, the aqd, and you can write anything which is halal in the aqd. As long as it's halal, you can stipulate any condition. It's a serious matter. It's not a. And I went to conduct a nikah, and I took time out. I said, "Can I have a chat with both of you, please?" And they came with their parents, and I said, "Look, this is not a joke. It's a serious thing, marriage." And I turned to the guy. I said, "Are you happy with what she had written? And will you accept it? And will you bind yourself to it?" And he said, "Yes, I will." So I said, "Okay, fair enough. And if you're happy with that, then that's fine. We'll go ahead." And I did. I never checked how they got on afterwards, but she'd stipulated that I will never have to cook and clean in our married life. So it's quite a heavy commitment. So she'd ironed out her position before entering into marriage. And often these things that you write, they get blurry as you get into the realities of marriage itself. So practicalities, housework, engagement with each other, financial arrangements, mobility. So sometimes some people write that you will go where my job takes me. how flexible the person is to changes. Who knows what happens around the corner? We don't know. Allah's plan for us, we have no idea whether we'll be affected by health or by ill health, by whatever Allah's will is, may happen. And then you need to be prepared and be flexible for each other. And that's part of compassion. Now, hi, Nigel. Some advice, your honest view, please. Should I vote Conservative? And do you think I will get an honest view? And if not, why not? And the reason is very, very important. You don't ask Nigel Farage about should I vote Conservative or Labour or about voting, because he's got a vested interest. Or you wouldn't ask this gentleman, Steve Jobs, who's passed away, should I buy an Android phone or an iPhone? He's the head of Apple. He was the head of Apple. And very important to know what bias is and your own personal bias. The moment you start looking for a spouse and you found someone you think this is the person, you have now become biased. And it's so important, just like with any, you wouldn't go to Steve to ask about Android phones, the benefit of Android phones. He won't tell you because his focus has been Apple phones. And so it's very important to recognize that you yourself, when you found a spouse, are automatically biased. Automatically. As Shakespeare said, which is often misquoted, love is blind in Romeo and Juliet. So, but yes, in essence, the meaning is correct. Love does not show, infatuation does not show the foibles, the shortcomings of the other. And so my key advice that I would suggest to you, and this is very important, when you look around, when I've looked around, I'm 59 years old now, and I've seen so many. I got married when I was 27, alhamdulillah, and when I look at so many people who've had problems with relationships and so on, and you identify and you've been involved in trying to sort out a lot of it stems from not involving others. And just recently I had one of my relatives, and she was victim of domestic violence, and we had to try and sort out what we could for her. And it's fascinating that she never asked people's opinions. When she asked, people were saying don't marry him because he is known to be quite harsh. But she didn't pay attention, and she went ahead. And then it only transpired afterwards, even before she got married to him, he'd been abusive to her. So it's quite a major thing that you've got to understand that you are not the best judge of who is best for you, because you're in love, you're infatuated. If you got that far, sometimes people are not that far. They're considering. Either way, involve others. The earlier, the better. A lot of you have the benefit that we did not have. I have a lovely, my mother's passed away, God rest her soul, may Allah have mercy on her soul, and my father's still around. And they were brilliant parents, but they were biased in one particular way because they believed that marriage should only be with relatives or within a particular caste. So I had that difficulty when I got married. My wife had the same difficulty because her father also believed, and her father had also quite strict on this and believed that no chance should a girl ever marry outside the caste or the family. But we bore it patiently. We involved them from the outset, and it took 2.5 years before they agreed. But what I'm saying to you is that's us with that kind of, a lot of your parents, they're the next generation, they're my generation. They know better than to have these kind of biases and so on. They love you. They're often, I mean, I say that because, I mean, I have to be careful because often sometimes the parents are the problem, but Generally speaking, you are luckier than we were, in the sense that culturally, the parents are more aware of what is what and what is not, and more amenable to you marrying outside, etc. Try involve others. The earlier, the better. And one of the Maulanas who works in prisons, and his kids are now into the teenage years, and he was saying, "Oh, what's the best advice?" I said, "The best advice is a turning point now, and it's a very difficult one to do. And I don't know whether you've got to work at it. Is now you have to become their friend. Up till now, you were mother and father. Of course, that continues, but now you have to become and let go a little bit and be their confidant." And so involve others, get advice, mother, father, siblings, brother, sister, friends. Do not be individualistic. The ones who love you know, and they've seen you grow, they spent the most time with you, and they know you best. Ask them, do you think we would be better? I found this girl, this is her. Do you think we would be good together? I found this guy. Do you think we would be good together? So ask, involve others, and get their advice. You don't have to take it, but you can listen to it, and it might mature you and realize that you yourself are biased on it. Overcome your shyness. Sometimes, it's difficult to open these subjects with your parents or then involve somebody, the auntie or the uncle who comes in, just speak to them, and then get involve somebody to that. Ask for recommendations. People do not do enough research. Speak to the person's family and friends, their background, their trustworthiness. Ask always in private and make it confidential. And there is a hadith that if you are asked about a marriage, somebody's marriage proposal, so you're asked about a character reference, you have to be honest. So rule number one, you have to be honest to that, because somebody's life decision could rest on your recommendation. And likewise, the person listening, and so this happened to me. There's a sister who's getting married. She asked me about such and such, and I responded that I thought, yeah, he's good in these ways, but in these ways, no. And here are his weaknesses, in my opinion, humble opinion. I don't think you're compatible, but that's your call. And so I tried to be as honest as I could to her. And she has now got to respect that confidentiality. Sadly, she went and told him, and that caused a rupture between our relationship, which is not allowed. It's haram to divulge, because it's confidential information you're requesting from the other. Then it comes down to, so you're involved, your family, how much should you interact? How much should you interact? You've decided on someone, how much should you interact? And it's very difficult to do this, to gauge it, to put a stop to it. In the day when I was thinking of marrying my wife, who was going to become my wife, Sister Tanveer, when I was going to marry her, we didn't have mobile phones, and there wasn't this texting and the social media and everything. I don't have it now anyway, but that's what I mean. So for you, it's more difficult, but you have to limit it. And I respected my wife, because her decision was that we met 3-4 times. We always met at somebody's house, where there was a friend of ours who was acting as a kind of chaperone. We decided after the 4th meeting, yes, we asked many questions, that yes, we would like to marry each other. And then her decision was, that's it, no more interaction until our parents agree. So 2.5 years before our parents agreed. And she took that decision, and I respected it, because she felt there is no point in getting involved with each other to an extent where there's heartbreak if the decision is not in line, or if something else happens. And it's fair enough. You've got to be careful, and you've got to know your own boundaries. And so my suggestion is always limit interaction to what you can, in order for you to make a decision. Common pitfalls. What are the common pitfalls people go to? Now, top line, you might think, oh, yeah, sure. But actually, honest to God, it is the truth. I've come across people who I know spent days researching which phone to get. And the decision regarding their spouse was just a matter of, a couple of hours research, and that's it. So something you're going to spend the rest of your life with somebody deserves that kind of depth of research, looking, analyzing, assessing. Number two, beware of secret marriages. Do not ever enter into any marriage that is a secret marriage. In my opinion, that kind of marriage I've never known it to be successful. And people say, "Oh, the fiqh allows it." I think personally, it is a sham on the first wife and on the relationship there. So I think personally, you keep it like that. You hurt the first, and hurting someone is a sin. Beware of secret marriages, and we get it quite a lot in prisons. We get prisoners asking to marry someone, for us to marry them, and they may be already be married. And so we've got quite a strict line. We won't do it unless there's more. We need more information, basically, because otherwise there's a danger of this happening. Do not be fooled. Do not be fooled by Islamic jargon and Islamic superficiality. And I've already said that to you. Just because he or she dresses a particular way, says the right words here and there, doesn't make him or her, the Islamic model or some kind of it. It does not. Character is far more important. It's more long-lasting. It is the personality of the person that you have to look for. Beware of predatory people. And I was shocked about 3 or 4 cases, one about 2 years ago, it became apparent that right from the outset, she had homed in on him with a kind of vengeance. And she was constantly, she'd arranged for herself to be at places where he was. It was almost like an infatuation. And he'd fallen for it. They got married and they were divorced within about a year and a half, sadly. But be careful of predatory people. Do not be pressurized into making quick decisions. And that is a full alarm bell. If somebody says, look, and again, I have a friend of mine whose daughter got married to a Kurdish guy, and they only knew her for a little while, and he put pressure because he said, I'm going to be deported. So I need to know urgently. And so he put that kind of emotional pressure on her. And I said to her afterwards, the relationship broke down. I said, you should have just backed off and said, sorry, I'm taking my time on this. And if it comes to it, so do not be pressurized into making quick decisions. Sometimes there are other things at stake that you may not be aware of. Don't be naive. And a lot of us, we grow up in our households. We don't get people paying sort of compliments about us, about our appearance, or about our attractiveness, or whatever. It's not the done thing in our culture. And there you are. I go off to university, and then somebody pays you a compliment, and suddenly, oh wow! And all the Hollywood romantic films come into the sway, and you before you realize it, you're into the swing of things. So don't be naive. And be careful. Don't take knee-jerk reactions when it comes to this kind of thing. Toxicity, abusive language. So there was a divorce of a friend of mine, his son, and there he was quite shocked to find that her every sentence had a swear word in it, and she never did before. It was just found it so strange, the kind of a demarcation quickly. So toxicity, abusive language. Be careful of narcissists. controlling people, meticulous micromanaging. If you sometimes you go into somebody's house and you see the reaction, the interaction between husband and wife, and you think, oh dear, they're picking points on every little thing, and you feel so sorry for that relationship. So controlling, it's never their fault. How easy are they to self-analyze? How humble are they when because selfishness, arrogance is a big thing. It'll come to the fore. Look at the relationship, and quite important, you yourself will know people, and will know people who are struggling in their relationships, will aunties, uncles, whatever it is, extended family, neighbors, friends. Analyze their relationship and ask, how could that have been avoided at the beginning when choosing was an option? Sometimes it's not. And that's why Allah's allowed us divorce, and Allah's allowed us mediation and all the measures to try and rectify a relationship. And if it came to it, then Allah's allowed us divorce. So all of these things, measures are there because sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes we make mistakes in our decision, or sometimes we made the best decision we could with the evidence and material we had in front of us, but actually it wasn't the best for us, and we realize that after. So all of these are there. But you ask yourself, what research could have shed light on their relationship before marriage? What should have been alarm bells? And also financial difficulties. Check their financial suitability. Can they look after themselves, let alone you, let alone each other? It's very important. So many I know. I mean, there's a sister who's a doctor. She got married to this brother, and their marriage lasted about 5-6 years because she realized that they had 2 kids. But she realized that actually he was insisting she worked. And her ideal was always when the kids came along, she would then take a break. And then after, maybe after a while, she'd go back to work. But he was shocked. No, you're not. We can't survive on just my salary. And all these things had not been ironed out before. And these things then added to other problems and between them and so on. And it eventually, sadly, came to a head. So look at these kind of things. When it comes to interactions, respect the Islamic boundaries. Allah's put them there for a reason. Avoid putting yourself in the situation of khalwa, which is being on your own with a member of the opposite gender who is not mahram to you, who's not. It's quite important. So do not put yourself in a situation like that. I find it interesting that in probation work, for example, you don't see a client on your own if they're a member of the opposite gender. You have to take someone with you. And that safeguards you, safeguards them. So be careful. The Prophet ﷺ said, when there are 2, there is a third. It is shaitan. When a man and a woman are together, there is a third. So just do not put yourself in that scenario. One of our, I shouldn't mention that, but his daughter became pregnant. And actually they had to do a quick nikah. And what happened is that he was walking her home, and then he said, I'll come up for a coffee. And she could not say no. She found herself wanting for him to come up, but then did not have the realization, actually, no, do not go down that route. So don't put yourself in khalwa. Always have a chaperone, always have someone. And if you've discussed this with your parents, if you've discussed it with your brothers, sisters, friends, always have them with you. Avoid touching. Easy thing to say, but please, in this day and age, avoid touching. And for Ramadan, I gave a talk a while back in Huddersfield University on Ramadan, and I was passing through the cafeteria, and there was these looked like Pakistani background lads sitting there, and there was a Asian-looking, Pakistani-looking girl sat on one of their laps. So I passed by, and one of them said something, and the other one said, "Subhanallah." I didn't, and I heard that, and I went up and I said, "Brothers, we're in the middle of Ramadan." And I was trying to say, think what you're doing, and the guy with the young woman on his lap, he turned around and he said, "Yeah, we're fasting." And so you thought, because in the culture they're in, maybe the pressures are different on them. So avoid touching, avoid lewd language. And it's easy, when you sometimes, and if you think about it, if your texts or whatever it is that you're communicating, if those were made public, would they embarrass you? If they would, do not do that. Do not put yourself in that position. And check your own personal physical safety and emotional safety always. Make sure people know where you are going, that someone is with you at all times when you're meeting, or if you need to. And very important. So I had a friend whose daughter killed herself, and she killed herself because she was basically heartbroken, and she'd entered into a particular relationship that she shouldn't have. And the sad thing, and he regretted it to this day. Because he'd broken the bridges with her. And so it's very important for both ways. Parents are parents, and they have to learn that these are their children, whatever they do. And the love is unconditional. You love your child, you do the best you can for them, and you offer. But likewise, the other way. If you are struggling through finding a spouse, or things are going wrong in whatever, maybe you did something you shouldn't have, bridges are not burnt completely. There are people who care for you. Seek advice, seek advice, seek advice. Do not go on this path on your own. All right, things will, people's mental health is affected, etc. Don't. You are not on your own. Get help. Ask. Bring people into your confidence. Tell them what you're going through. So it's very, very important. Otherwise, I'm talking about extremes in different things I've seen, but there are measures leading up to those. And so please involve people, involve your family, involve your friends. And there are so many people out there you can ask advice from, and in confidence, etc. And lastly, of course, always ask Allah. Make dua constantly, and ask Allah to guide you to the person that is best for you, a life companion, a friend who can be there for you and you for them. So always ask Allah, istikhara, pray istikhara, salah, and make dua constantly.